Hey there, it's Richard Serrett, occasional weekend guest host of Coast to Coast AM and host of The Conspiracy Show. And you're listening to Wayne and Michelle's Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast.
Welcome to the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast. Coming to you from the glacial dumping grounds known as the Michigan Basin. I'm Michelle.
And I am Wayne.
And we are a Michigan-based husband and wife educator and podcasting duo that after having a UFO sighting in March of 2018, have started to examine UFOs and other paranormal topics within Michigan and beyond.
Topics include UFOs, the paranormal, conspiracy theories, ghosts, alternative history and archaeology, cryptids, and all things strange and paranormal. So sit back, grab a drink, and come along with us on this journey down the paranormal rabbit hole. Well, here we are again, Michelle.
Yes, we are back.
Episode 17.
I know, it's hard to believe.
Yes, what are we calling this one? The paradigm is shifting. With our special guest we're going to have on today,
Miss Cristina Gomez.
This is going to be awesome. I can't wait to get her on and talk to her.
She is quite knowledgeable.
She is. And that's kind of what we need. Somebody to kind of bridge that gap and take over some of the older UFO investigators and bring in some new light and some new information, and bring some new people into it. So a lot of people are phasing out of researching the phenomenon.
Well, you figure from earlier sightings in the U.S. and abroad, this younger generation needs to step up to the plate, and we've got that with Christina.
Yeah, and it seems like that people get involved in this only, like us. We got involved in this only because we've had a crazy sighting, to say the least.
Well, even before that, we were a couple of sci-fi nerds.
We were into it, but more from a cultural standpoint, a pop culture standpoint.
Yeah, more for the entertainment value.
Yeah,
and then it's like, right. Oh, what's that? Oh, yeah. Wow.
Exactly. All right. So, well, first of all, got to talk about our Facebook group. It's getting insane.
Yeah, you guys are amazing.
These people are legends. In the last 3 days, we've approved over 300 people to the group, and it just keeps going and going. So welcome everybody that's new to the group. And if you want to join the group, just get on Facebook and search up Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast. Or I think you can just put in Michigan UFO Sightings. And
for some reason, our group pops up right away.
Yeah, it's probably because everybody's joining.
I know.
So, and we've got people now from all around the world, which is really, really cool. So today we've got Cristina Gomez coming on. We've got some communication corner.
Yeah, we've got some stories.
Yep. So people have been emailing us, so we want to read those to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remember, if you have a story you would like to tell, we would like to talk to you. You can reach out to us at mi.ufo.podcast@gmail.com. Send us a brief summary of your experience, and we'll contact you to discuss things further and try to get you or your story on the podcast.
Also, don't forget, we do have a merchandise store. I know I received a couple of emails about what the link was for our store. If you want to help support the podcast, we got some really cool things on the store, and we try to keep the prices as low as possible. But if you go to www.miufopodcaststore, that's all one word, .online. You don't have to then put a .com or anything like that. That'll take you right to our products that we offer. And we've got 2 pieces of artwork that we're using for t-shirts, mugs, hoodies, stickers, you name it. We've got it up there.
Yeah, we saw Burton rocking out his t-shirt on his live podcast last night.
Yes. They did episode 200 of the Lost in the Dark podcast. So congratulations to those guys. That's awesome. Thanks for the shout out. We did a read-in for them at the beginning of the show like they did for us. And they played it last night. And of course, he's rocking out that Michigan UFO sightings alien holding Michigan in its grip. So he's like, of course I got to own one of these. Of course.
Yeah, because of course these sightings are all over Michigan. So why wouldn't the alien just hold on to Michigan itself?
Exactly. So that's awesome. So thanks to the guys at Lost in the Dark podcast and giving us a shout out, and we shout them out almost every episode. So we're really happy to work with some local Michigan guys, along with like the band of Bearded Brothers. Anybody else that wants to kind of collaborate, we're more than open to talking to you, and let's get something set up.
Yep, love our Michigan peeps.
Absolutely. So Michelle, tonight we've got Cristina Gomez, so we got to get her on the line here soon.
We do have Christina coming on shortly.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and get into what's coming up next?
Oh, you know what time it is.
What time is it, Michelle?
It's time for What's in the News.
Yes. What is in the news?
All right, so it's October. Of course, we've got Halloween coming up.
Spooky month.
I know. And to take a little bit of a shift, no pun intended, with the whole shifting of the paradigm, over to the Sunday drives or the nighttime drives that sometimes folks like to take. And it seems in Saginaw, they happen to have a road just like the Canton area. In one of our earlier episodes about Denton Road, theirs is Dice Road.
Yes.
So just a couple days ago on the 14th, an article hit that Midland residents take interest in Michigan's most cursed road in Saginaw.
Yeah, this is really a cool story.
Dice Road crosses a rural section of Michigan between Saginaw and Midland, and with 3 reportedly haunted sites, it could be the most cursed road in the state. It is one of the most well-documented paranormal cases in the nation's history. So it's no wonder that Midland residents are taking such an interest in the paranormal happenings on the road and in the original home. Seriously, it sounds just like what I grew up with Denton Road just being a couple miles from my home.
Yeah.
So Pomeranian owned the home on Dice Road in Merrill when the hauntings began. After being terrorized by loud pounding noises inside and outside the home and unexplained fires, he contacted the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office. Deputies couldn't figure out what was going on. They checked for footprints, searching for any evidence of people prowling around, and they looked for damage on the exterior of the house. They never could find any physical evidence to explain away the strange occurrences, according to retired captain of the Saginaw County Sheriff's Department, Fred Clark.
I would say to a doubter, not to doubt. There are a lot of things that happen in this world that are unexplainable, and I would also say that many of these things we're not to know, Clark said. Retired Sergeant of Saginaw Sheriff's Department Chris Frisbee recounts his time at the home. The Dice Road corridor is kind of strange, Frisbee said. We have the cemetery on one end and the Pomeranian home up the road. I heard the noise. I saw stuff out there. I don't know how to explain it, but I'll tell you one thing. I saw it.
So, think about it for a second. This actually started around 1974. So we're spanning 4 decades of this going on in the Midland Saginaw area. With a scary story to be told, filmmaker Stephen Prozac Shippey jumped on the opportunity to make a movie about Dice Road as the 7th installment in his Haunted Saginaw series.
What a name to have. What a nickname to have,
Yeah, I
right?
was going to say
right?
all things. To me, when you spend all of those resources and can't prove anything either way, you did prove that it was paranormal activity, Shippey told M Live. There is no paranormal case in the world with even a tenth of this police activity.
When Shippy heard about the story, he began doing some research, and then he stumbled upon a binder full of police reports about the home. He talked to former officers who worked on the investigation, neighbors, and anyone he could find who might know something about the home. He also visited the home. In a Facebook post in a Midland County community group, Jessica Gambino asked members to detail their experiences. She was inspired to do so after watching Shippy's documentary.
I mean, these are things that we're seeing on it's reported a nightly basis from people of all ages and backgrounds. So as they, recall their stories. So that particular post took off with more than 450 comments. It appears that many have reported encountering something paranormal out on Dice Road. One commenter said, I had a friend who lived on Dice Road in the 70s and saw all the action with police and the investigation with the haunted house. It was real. Another Midland County resident, Shannon Schultz, said, I went with my now husband, fiance at the time, on Halloween with some friends at midnight. Okay, so that sounds like the local, local thing that I used to do.
Let's go find the woman in blue.
Yeah,
the woman in white.
12 o'clock at night, driving down the road. We got there at 11:50 p.m., nothing. Then, right at midnight, all these orbs or ghosts appeared. Each one was above a grave in the cemetery, just bouncing up and down. We just about pooped our pants and left. Yes, that's reported.
Yep.
When we were driving there, it was clear, but leaving, it was foggy and creepy. It was something like a movie.
Many residents agree that they wouldn't go there at night for any reason. Someone else even said that they went into the woods and got a lady on camera. Ooh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, well, it also sounds very much like other stories around Michigan and I'm sure around the U.S.
This apparition of a woman has been seen several times coming out of the Dice Road Cemetery at odd hours of the night, and she could be the source of the strange occurrences. Filmmaker Shippy posits that the Pomeranian home may have been cursed after Howard Pomeranian had a dispute with a neighbor believed to be a witch.
She cursed the home.
Absolutely.
She cursed it.
Other Midland residents are not so quick to believe the mystery.
I live 1.5 miles from there. One of my patients that just passed is buried there along with his wife and family. I spoke to his kids and brother. None of them have experienced anything. I drive by there all the time, even during the night, and nothing has ever happened. I'm not afraid of any of that stuff, Nicole Zinn said. So, who occupies the home today? Well, the owners now, Dave and Luann Larson, have been there for more than 40 years. So since, mid-70s, since Harold had originally owned it. Never believing their home to be haunted, the Larsons describe some strange happenings, like an antique radio making noise when it wasn't plugged in, and objects being mysteriously moved. Oh, okay, but your house isn't haunted, but things are moving and starting up on their own with no power supply.
Right.
Luann had a high school friend that was divorced and dating a part-time policeman with the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office, Dave said. And he and I went fishing one day. On the way home, I said, hey, maybe next weekend we could have you guys over to our house for a barbecue. And he said, no. I said, what do you mean no? And he said, I'm not going to your house. That's all I'm saying. I will not go to your house. Come to find out, he had been there through the sheriff's department that threw up a red flag showing that something had gone on here.
Yeah, the police officers were called out there, and
there was a binder in the home of all the police reports. In addition, Larson's two daughters have an eerie story. Growing up, they only knew a little about the home, but as they got older, they learned much more.
My parents went out to dinner, and we were here alone, sitting in the main living room, Julie Larson said. We saw a flash outside, and my dog started barking and got up on the bay window, and then we looked, and some guy put his face up to the window. Oh, boy. We ran into the other room, and Bridget called our neighbor, Julie said. It was snowing, and there were no footprints or anything.
Well, and
there was nothing.
Yeah, they say it was like a white face, like it had a glow to it. You couldn't see anything except the round white head peeking in the window. So it's like, is it the creepy neighbor coming over just to mess with him?
Exactly.
So, but Bridget LaJoyce wants answers. I would like some clarity to it, she said. It's always in the back of my mind now, and now my kids are here quite often, and now they're questioning things. So, I mean, Stephen Shippey needs to kind of look around Michigan, because I think that he needs to take a look at Denton Road, even though it's all been paved and it's not a dirt road anymore. Sounds like a similar story to local city that I grew up by.
Yep. And then here it says that if you're interested in learning more, you can watch this documentary, A Haunting on Dice Road, The Hell House, on Amazon Prime. So I think I know something I'm going to watch a little bit later on.
Yeah, that Amazon Prime account
really
comes
cool.
in handy.
It does. It does. One last little tidbit. Author Raymond Szymanski is doing another live presentation coming up on Tuesday, October 19th at 7 p.m. at the Centerville Historical Society. This is free of charge and no restrictions required. This will be held at the Recplex West Theater, 965 Miamisburg Centerville Road. The reception is at 6:30 p.m. The program starts at 7 p.m. Ray is going to have all 3 books in the Alien Shades of Grey's trilogy to be available for purchase after the presentation, including his last book, Swamp Gas My Ass. So make sure you get there and enjoy the presentation. All right. I think we should probably do some shout outs.
Yeah,
what do you think?
We've got some folks that we need to mention.
All right, so I'm going to start here with Uncharted X with Ben. Ben is a longtime fan of history and puts up incredible videos on YouTube and also puts his shows in podcast form. Ben goes to investigate places like Peru and Egypt, to name just a couple, and he was even recently out west at the Channeled Scablands with Randall Carlson and the Brothers of the Serpent, Kyle and Russ. They just had a great time investigating what's going on out there. Of course, with Randall Carlson, it's going to be a good time. But he's basically looking for evidence of high technology used by ancient people. So it's amazing stuff. Check them out on YouTube for some amazing high-quality videos of these places. Just go into YouTube and just do a search for Uncharted X.
So, and then we've got our guys just a little to the north,
our Michigan boys.
The Lost in the Dark podcast, hosted by Burton and Aaron. This is a pretty cool podcast that bills itself as an attempt to capture incredible conversations between best friends as we explore all of our passions, but especially music and the world of heavy metal. So if you're into paranormal investigations and loud heavy metal music, give them a listen. Strong language, but it's heavy metal and the paranormal. What else would you expect?
Then we're going to do a large, loud shout out so it can be heard all the way across the pond to the UK. And we're talking about Phenomenon Magazine, the world's most recognized e-zine of its kind. The magazine investigates the whole realm of the strange, profound, unknown, and unexplained, delving into paranormal, UFOs, cryptids, parapsychological, and 14 events. The magazine can be downloaded every month for free in PDF format. Check out the show notes for a link to the magazine. We will also be featured in an upcoming issue of the e-zine, so stay tuned for more information.
Yeah, still waiting for our folks from the UK for that contact. And finally, we have Miss Cristina Gomez and the Shifting the Paradigm podcast. This podcast features a weekly interview and chat show that focuses on a wide variety of mysterious topics related to UFO, UAP sightings and the possibility of alien visitation in the present and the past. Cristina Gomez interviews researchers, witnesses, enthusiasts, and field investigators on their own pursuits of the truth behind the mysteries. Also included is Christina's new show called Mysteries with a History, where Christina will will be covering a wide variety of topics, from unexplained disappearances to UFO sightings to encounters with bizarre creatures, and so much more that can come under the umbrella of the extraordinary, the strange, the paranormal, and the supernatural.
All right, Michelle, I think we should jump into our communication corner.
Yeah, we've got some stories tonight. We've got two. We've got Richard and Bethany. So first we have from Richard. I stumbled across your podcast over the weekend, and thank God I did. I just wanted to thank you for opening up the subject of triangle sightings. I feel much better knowing that I'm not alone in what I experienced with one of those sightings myself. Much of your descriptions of what you were seeing hit home and is pretty much spot on with what I saw as well. This is something that I don't have many people to talk about it with, and it can be a lonely place to be. So hearing your stories confirms that I'm not nuts. The only difference is that I live in Minnesota and not Michigan. I've never been able to shake off the sighting. It's baffled me in many ways. And like you said, what are they doing? My sighting happened on October 11th of 2001, just 5 to 6 miles northeast of downtown Minneapolis in a very populated area. It caught me totally off guard, and I went from surprised to confused to scared. Lots of emotions. Very weird.
Yep. And you know what? As long as we can help somebody or provide you with an outlet, or you can hear that other people have experienced that same type of situation, then I feel like we've done our job, because, we're just regular people, a couple of teachers that went through a crazy experience, and it took us a while to wrap our heads around everything and for us to then get to this point. So yeah, we're glad we can help you guys out in any way. And
it's again why we say that, you can reach out to us at mi.ufo.podcast@gmail.com, because we truly do appreciate these stories. And, if you're okay with it, we love getting them out there for other folks who might be in the same situation to hear your story, as well as ours.
The conversation needs to be had, though. I mean, regardless as tough as it might be, or as strange as it might be, or how you feel, do not be bullied by people and what they might think of you or what you think they think of you, because you don't know. They might have had an experience.
Yeah. So just remember, we don't always have to wait for the government to tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
We know.
And as we're going to talk to Christina about, we got to get done here so we can get her on. But what we're going to talk to her about is, where is this disclosure going to come from? And I think it's people like us. It's people like her. And I hope she will talk to us about that in a little bit.
All right. We also have a story from Bethany. On October 24th, 2020, around 11 to 11:30 p.m., I saw strange lights in the sky on my way to work. I was headed towards Howell, Michigan from Stockbridge when I began seeing these lights. They sort of resembled the movement of a lighthouse light, where it paced the sky from left to right, but they were short and seemed to be through the clouds. I immediately called my friend to tell her what happened, and I tried Googling things and trying to find an explanation, but nothing happened. I know with certainty that it wasn't a meteor shower or an airplane or anything like that. It was super inconsistent, where 1 minute it would happen back to back, and then it would take 2 to 5 minutes for the next light. It was a cloudy night, but the lights were somewhat large. I saw the same thing tonight, October 15th, around 9:50 p.m. Driving the same direction and near the same place, I saw a Facebook post from 2013 saying someone saw strange lights in the sky in Howell, but obviously that was a long time ago. Anyone see anything? Again, I can't find an explanation. The night it happened in 2020, I tried taking a video, but I couldn't get it on camera because the lights just weren't bright enough. Yeah, and, it's one of those, for those who don't know the Howell area, a lot of it is still open land. Now, mind you, a lot of it has been developed, but it's not an area that for those who don't live in Michigan, it's an inland city. So you're not even looking at the possibility of a lighthouse. There are no lighthouses there.
The only thing I will say is that is the place when I lived in Howell, that's where I did my flight school and where I went to flight training. And there is a airport there, Livingston County Airport. And they do have a lighthouse type of thing. So I would like to know more about maybe where she was located. Yeah. So it is possible that maybe somehow, depending on her location, she might have seen that light going off, identifying the airport to pilots at night. So, well, Michelle, before we get Christina on, I think we should take a quick break.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. On the line, we have Miss Christina Gomez. So, Michelle, why don't you tell us a little bit about Miss Christina Gomez?
Yeah, we've got a little bit of a backstory. So, Christina is in college now, studying for a BA degree in business and communication. She began her own YouTube channel to scrutinize public UFO sighting videos submitted to a variety of platforms. Using video software, she slowed down the footage, zoomed in, stabilized, and enhanced, then would post the results for others to study. In March of 2021, Christina began working with the team at the Debrief, producing a video content featuring interviews with prominent figures in the UFO research communities such as Lue Elizondo and James Fox. Christina is working on her first book, which will take a deep dive into many aspects of the UFO mystery from the perspective of a young Gen Z Latina, being aimed at her generation to promote more interest in the subject, while continuing to interview researchers and witnesses on her YouTube channel, which has several feature shows that cover different aspects of the phenomenon.
That is so cool. I can't wait.
It is.
All right, so let's bring on Miss Christina Gomez. Thank you for joining us, Christina. How are you?
I am so pumped. I have my coffee filled with sugar. I am ready for today. How about you guys?
We are busy working on school stuff and ready for this. So we are extremely excited.
And we've been caffeinated for hours.
Yes. So we brewed a special pot of coffee this morning just so we can have the energy to do everything we needed to do. So.
Yeah, it was definitely, I told Wayne it was not like the flavored water that comes out of the Keurig.
No,
because
this was
real.
This was real
army coffee.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Nice and thick.
Amaretto flavored coffee, I believe. So yeah. So, okay, let's just jump right into this because I don't want to waste your time. And I'm sure you got a lot of things to do and maybe get some sleep, because I know you are talking to Big Will last night. You were talking about how you don't ever sleep. So let's get you some sleep here.
Well, I have a lot of things to do after. I won't be sleeping anytime soon.
Oh, well, there you go. All right. So what made you decide to jump into the whole conspiracy, paranormal, UFO, UAP realm? Basically, like I asked Richard Serrett, what is your why? Why did you get involved in this?
So I do not jump into conspiracies just because there's very little evidence to back that up. But when it comes to the UFO phenomena and even the paranormal, well, how it started was I used to do UFO sighting video enhancements on my YouTube originally for about, 8 months to a year. And this was when I was beginning to be very, very interested in the UAP topic. And there's a big difference from liking the UFO topic and being interested in it. It just depends on how much time you spend on the research. So at this moment, this is about a year and a half ago, I guess by now, I was getting interested in the topic and I was looking and trying to find people to kind of get information from. And I couldn't find many people that I could genuinely relate to. There were very few people from my generation, very few women, and very few Latin Americans. So I was thinking, you know what? If I'm having these questions, there has to be someone else out there that's having the same questions as I am. So I'm just going to go for it, throw myself to the wolves, and put my face on my YouTube channel, because I was very hesitant to do it at first. I was like, I don't really want to get involved. I don't want anyone to know really who I am. because this topic has a lot of scrutiny attached to it, regardless if you're in the topic or if you're not. But I thought to myself, I'm not going to be doing this for me. I'm going to be doing it for my generation to make that difference and to help people to the best of my ability get the answers without placing my bias or my opinions in the research that I do. Because we know everything is about perspective, and perspective can be based off of opinion or bias. For example, if you already believe in UFOs, but you're like a fanatic and you see something in the sky, you're going to automatically think that's an alien. They're going to come to abduct me because I am the coolest person ever. Okay. and that's obviously an extreme. I'm not saying that everyone's like that, but if you have that mentality, you're going to believe that everything you see is an alien coming for you. But if you're in the more scientific aspect, or someone who doesn't even believe in the phenomena, you might say, it's obviously a drone. I mean, or it could be the military, this, that, and the other. So everything is perspective related. And depending on your own experiences or on your own bias, it's going to pollute your data that either you're looking for or that you give to the public. Because even when you're doing your own research and you're finding a topic, let's say reptilians, okay, this is an example, and you don't believe in them, you're going to find everything in your capability to prove the fact that your answer is right, that reptilians are not real. Now, if you believe in reptilians or whatever other topic, you're going to find research to support your already placed opinion on it.
Yeah, they consider that confirmation bias.
That's exactly what it is. And that can be very dangerous in any subject that you study, not just in this one, but in anything. And you also learn that in school, in college, when you're writing up papers. You need to be very careful where you find your information and how you place your information out to the public.
Yeah, you were talking about, how long it took for you to really want to put your face out there and get involved in this. My wife and I had our experience in 2018, and after getting a lot of information from people on a private Facebook group that we created, and it just kind of blew up like wildfire. We ended up, after 2 years of talking and looking at this stuff coming into us, to go ahead and start a podcast. And kind of like you're looking at bringing in your generation and kind of educating them in the old ways of the UFOs and the paranormal, which is really cool. We've kind of fallen into this thing of trying to help people that are wanting to talk about UFOs and giving them some anonymity, I guess,
like a safe space.
Yeah. And letting them talk and get their stories out there and get it off of their chest. We're kind of in this to help people, but also find out what the hell it was that we had to deal with. It's just been, as I always say, a wild ride since then. I mean, I am a earth scientist. I mean, I teach earth science and I teach kids how to do science. That's why I know about confirmation bias and, doing multiple experiments and try not to, how do you falsify your hypothesis and things like that? What would make that not true, kind of a thing. Yeah, it's just been insane, because as a former private pilot and being in the military and all of the things that I've done in the past, and then we saw this giant triangle hovering over the road, and it was nothing that could have, I don't know, it defied every laws of physics that I know, and it was ridiculous.
Well, and I'm not going to lie, the fact that both of us are teachers talking about this is taboo.
Yeah. It's it's not something you readily will jump out and risk your professional neck for, but come to find out, a lot of people have seen these strange things in the sky, and some of them need to talk about it because they were very traumatized by what they saw, and then all the things that happened around them. And I can honestly say that so far, everything for Michelle and I, after our experience, has been pretty positive. It hasn't been, other than that moment of sheer terror and trying to get out of the proximity of this craft, whatever it was, and then just having it disappear. so far it's been pretty positive. So it's had a good impact on us.
I don't know. Sometimes whenever I had some questions yesterday actually about the podcast, and when I started giving a little bit of information and background information, I kind of got that pause and then that look with the raised eyebrow. And I go, oh, that's the she's crazy look. So I'm like, this conversation is going to stop.
Or it's the bless your heart look, oh, bless your heart,
Yeah. So that was interesting yesterday, had that happen to me. So far with all of the interviews that you've done, which is an enormous amount, which 5 would you say made your top 5? Like your 5 most interesting, exciting?
Blew you
I know,
away.
kind of like your fab 5.
My fab 5. Okay, I can let's go with 2. I haven't done that many interviews, so
okay,
we'll go with 2. One of them was with Jim Harold, the guy from the Paranormal podcast that just happened a few days ago. I don't think it's been published yet, but his was really interesting because I'll be honest with you, I thought I bombed it. I thought like, oh man, he thinks I'm so boring. I'm saying these things. And then at the end, when we were off air, he was like, I've interviewed a lot of people, but you're one of the very few that actually really interested me. And I'm like, oh geez, oh my gosh, I was so nervous because this is a really big guy, and I was just thinking, oh geez. So that was probably one of them. And then another one, I really enjoyed talking to, well, the other one I would have to say would be on the Singularity Lab with Michael Mataloni. That was the first time I ever really talked about my UFO experience, along with some of my spiritual practices. So I'm not a religious person. I don't follow a certain kind of religion, but I do practice certain ancient techniques that I learned from a sadhu in India a few years back. And because of my knowledge of Buddhism, that I went into a temple when I was 16, to learning also some ancient techniques from Hinduism, it's really helped me in today's world with my research that I do, with being able to balance so much and also to meditate and have a clear mind so that I'm able to get a lot of things done in just a short period of time.
Awesome. Yeah, Jim Harold, he's just to the south of us. He's one of our neighbors over here in Ohio. So, but don't tell him that we really like him, because apparently all Michiganders are supposed to hate people from Ohio. I think it has something to do with that border skirmish we had like 150 years ago
for Toledo.
That's why Michigan has a little bit further south of a border, because of a little skirmish that was fought between like 6 people, I think it was.
I don't know. I have family in Ohio that love U of M and will not admit to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But they don't root for Ohio State.
Oh, dang.
Considering the people that you have talked to on your show and the research that you've done so far, what do you, and this is complete speculation, but I'm sure you can put something together. What do you think these things are, or what their intentions are? I know some people consider them a threat. Some people dive into the biblical demon aspect of it. Some people dive into the angelic side of it. So far in your research, what do you think is going on here?
So I've heard a lot of things, and I've had this question asked before, and I usually say it's not something that I've researched, which is true. I don't think about all these different aspects, especially when it comes to the religious aspect. That's not my forte, because in that aspect, believing that they're demons, believing that they're angelic creatures, that's very much based on mere perspective or speculation. There's not really any real evidence to back up that information. Now, you can also say that maybe a lot of these are black projects, just things that we simply do not know are in the works yet. And then you have possibilities that maybe these beings that are being seen, not just the craft in the sky, but actually when they come out of the craft and interact with the environment, they could very well be from this dimension. Maybe they're interdimensionals. Maybe there's something different altogether. The thing is that there are so many different stories of how they're described, about how they interact with one another and with humanity as a whole, that we simply can't say they're interdimensionals. That's all of them. It's the same kind of saying that when you see a dog on the street, you're saying, is it a Pomeranian? Is it a bulldog? Is it a Chihuahua? Not all dogs can be in the category of just dogs. They have their own special breed as well. Or in this case, it could be a different species or just a different understanding altogether when it comes to these entities. So for me, it's very difficult to say it's one of them, because it could very well be all of them, the things that we may already know, and maybe things that we never even thought about of what they could be. And that's my belief on it.
As far as like investigations into UAPs, where you think we're headed, in your opinion?
Where do you think? So you're asking me, where do you think, due to our research, where we're headed in the future?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good question. From something that I've been saying since kind of the beginning, and what a lot of people have also been saying, is that we're not really going to be getting disclosure from our government or even any governments around the world. It's going to be coming from us. We're the disclosure. It's through our experiences. It's through having these podcasts. It's through having these conversations with people that we know in our little cliques that is going to make the difference. Yes, we did get the preliminary report in June. And yes, that was incredibly exciting. Even though it didn't have information that we wanted, it's still a step forward. But for so many that are a part of this community, believe they already know the truth, have, in some respects, some of these people have already had their experiences, already had their encounters. And it's those people, it's the people with keeping their eyes on the skies that are able to have that disclosure, to be able to witness at least a piece of the truth, because I don't think we're going to be getting it from our government anytime soon. But I think having boots on the ground research or interacting with those that are UFO investigators, like real ones that have the equipment or that really just go out on their own without equipment, maybe just binoculars. Those are the people that I think need to be spoken to more, to be having more of these conversations and to walk people through on being able to, I guess, look for these craft or these beings or even cryptids. It doesn't matter. Any of these things that shift our paradigm, any of these things that we simply don't have an explanation for, it makes life that much more exciting when you think that you're seeing something that you've never seen before. And that can be the same when you go to the grocery store and you see a fruit and you're like, what's an Asian pear? What's a dragon fruit? I need to buy it, because you've never seen one before. You're going to go ahead and allow the curiosity in your mind spark, and you're going to jump on that. You're going to feed that curiosity. And then once you have that experience, once you bite into that dragon fruit, which are bland, by the way, beautiful, but very bland, then you might look for something else. You'll look for another thing to get that dopamine hit. And I think with this phenomena, there's so much information out there. There are so many little facets. You have the UFO history, you have people, you have the witness accounts, you have the scientific aspects, you have the spiritual aspects if you want to get into that. And so if you're no longer excited with the history, you can just jump into the next pool over and over and over again until you think you might have all the answers or not. But until then, it's that curiosity that makes us move forward.
Yeah, I've noticed that one of the things that immediately turns me away from listening to somebody, and this is just me, I mean, I guess it's my predisposition, my personality. But as soon as somebody tells me that they know what these things are, why they're here, I kind of get very dismissive, because it just, and they could be right, but you're telling me how does that saying go? cool story, bro. Where's the evidence? Right. I mean,
or as Willie would say, it's very sus.
Yeah, right. Yes. Red did it. Kick him out the airlock. Right. Yeah. But yeah, it is very sus because it turns me away. And that's, and I think those are the kind of people that, quote unquote, normal people that might be interested in UFOs. Then they hear those things from those people and they go, this is all just garbage.
And,
Instead of like an actual real researcher, maybe like the Richard Dolans out there, or listening to what Lue Elizondo actually has to say, those kind of things. But speaking of Lue Elizondo, what is your feelings on and your thoughts on the whole threat narrative? Do you think these things pose a threat other than, just being, in the way of commercial traffic or interfering with aircraft of our own? Or do you think there's maybe something else going on?
Lue Elizondo has touched on this, and I think he gave a really great explanation. And I'm just going to paraphrase. So if it's not fully correct, please correct me. But he was saying that if there is a security threat or not, which many people believe that they are not threats, because if they were, they would have killed us by now, blah, 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 that whole kind of shebang. But the reason, his belief, and I'm going to agree with this, is a reason to why it's classified as a security threat. It's so that people of power, the government, the military can actually jump on this conversation, because if it's not a threat, they're not going to care about it. They're not going to put funding into it. They're not going to put any researchers into it, at least publicly, because, well, our tax dollars shouldn't go to something that's simply not a threat, but just for a curiosity. Well, and then it's going to go into this argument of like, well, I'm not going to fund this just for fun. No. And there needs to be a reason behind it. So even though many people don't believe it's a threat, or many people say, why are they classifying UAPs as a threat? Like, obviously they're not. I think there's a lot of strategy behind it that many of us simply are not seeing the bigger picture. We're just kind of nitpicking here and there, which I think as humanity, we're very good at. We're very good at picking people's bad things versus complimenting them on their good things. Like, for example, you watch a movie, okay, and you're like, maybe you love a certain actor like Channing Tatum, okay, but he didn't say one line correctly. You're gonna write a whole review that the graphics weren't good, he didn't do a good job acting, that one scene was bad, but maybe the movie was flawless except for that one thing. You're gonna point that little piece out. And that same goes for this topic and for all topics that any of us talk about. We're going to just pick on that little thing and saying, well, why is saying it's a threat narrative? There's no reason for it. But like I said, I truly believe, and this is just speculation and also listening to Lue Elizondo, there is a bigger picture for it. And there's a reason to why they're saying that it's a threat. That's my answer.
Awesome answer. All right. So with all of the stories that you've researched so far, and you were talking about the, is it Caloris?
Yeah, Caloris in Brazil. Yeah.
Yeah. You were talking about that on UFO Garage with Big Willie. Is there a story other than that? And people go check out that podcast, or it's on YouTube with Big Willie on the UFO Garage with Christina. But is there a story that, or research that you've done that's kind of creeped you out or made you feel real uneasy once you started digging into it?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, a lot more than I want to mention. There's quite a few that really kind of shook me in all kinds of weird ways. The Caloris event is one of my favorite stories because it's so outlandish. Like, it's really a sci-fi movie. You would not believe it to be real, especially when you're just jumping into the UFO subject. Everyone knows about Roswell. Everyone knows about the typical gray aliens, but they don't really think about them actually having encounters, people having encounters with entities. And in this case, in Brazil, they did in 1977. I recommend for people that haven't heard of that case to look it up. It's seriously insane. There's another story that's one of my favorites currently, and that was the Holloman Air Force Base when allegedly President Eisenhower had a meeting with an extraterrestrial on a different craft. That one blew my mind. And there's a few other incidences where Eisenhower has had contact, allegedly. That was pretty interesting. But one case that I think kind of like put a little tingle in my spine was when I was researching the Black-Eyed Kids. This was one of my first episodes that I did for Mysteries with the History on my YouTube channel, which is still relatively new. Now my co-host is Jimmy Church, which is a lot of fun. It happened by accident once, and then now it's official, which is great because he has so much input that a lot of people don't know how to find that information because he's bringing his experience and he's been following a lot of these topics for almost 30 years. But anyways, the Black-Eyed Kids story is also incredibly weird. It's a very like Halloween story, which Halloween is coming up around the corner. And I am so excited to see all the kids in their Halloween costumes because I'm just going to put it out there. Kids that knock on my door and they have the best Halloween costume, they get extra candy. So I'm just saying.
As long as they don't have black eyes.
Yeah. No black eyes.
Don't invite them
Absolutely
in.
Not. No, because I might not be here the next day if that were to happen. And now for those that don't know the story, these are obviously all alleged accounts. There isn't much evidence to actually back up these claims, but there are quite a few people that have had an encounter, and it blew up more in the 90s to early 2000s where these encounters were happening a lot more often. But pretty much there's always going to be a group of kids, maybe 2 to 3 kids with completely black eyes and clothing that's either a little bit out of date or a hoodie and like jeans and sometimes no shoes, which is, well, actually they don't have feet, so never mind. Sometimes they do. But what I'm trying to say is these beings, because it seems like they're not actually children, will knock on your car window if it's late at night and you're in a parking lot, or at your front door at a really, really bizarre hour. And they'll ask to borrow your cell phone or if they can come in, which is, if anyone knows the very simple stories about vampires, you have to invite them in for them to enter. Otherwise, they simply cannot. Well, the same with these black-eyed children. If you don't say, yes, you can come in, they're just going to keep pestering you. Can we come in? Can we come in? Please let us in. But if you tell them no, they can't. There was one story that I covered that I'll briefly go over. And it was this man. He was in a parking lot at in a theater, and I think he was like writing checks or something, or like reading checks. And it's like nighttime. It's pretty late. And he has these 2 kids wearing a hoodie knock on his window, and they say, "Hey, we forgot our money at home. Can you take us home?" And the man says, well, before he even says anything, he had this intense feeling of fear, anxiety, and really kind of like fight or flight kind of sensation. And at first he didn't look at these children very well, right? Because it's dark out. But as soon as they lifted their head up, their eyes were completely black. And like there was no white in their eyes whatsoever. And that's going to throw off anyone, even if your eyes are naturally black, which some people have no color around their eyes, that's normal. Okay. It's not a big deal. But when even the white is gone, yeah, it's going to scare anybody. It's going to freak out anyone. So this man said, no, I can't take you home. It's just call your parents. And the kids are like, oh, we don't have our cell phone. Please let us in. Please let us in. And the man said, no, I won't do that. And then one of the boys said, don't worry, we're not going to hurt you. We don't have any weapons. And that's quote of what the man said when he was writing this memo. And in his mind, he was thinking, why would they say that they don't have any weapons? These are kids. Why on earth would they just casually say, oh, no, we don't have weapons? That's very out of character. That simply does not make sense for children that are ranging anywhere from the age of 5 to maybe 15 or 16. Okay. That's just not a thing. So anyways, he doesn't let these boys come home with him and he dries off. And he said that he would never forget that experience because these kids couldn't enter his car without his permission. Their eyes were black and they wouldn't leave him alone. They kept asking and asking and asking. And I think when I was reading that story, regardless if it was true or not true, it's very freaky. And I think a really awesome campfire story for this Halloween.
Yeah, I've heard of that, and some people kind of equated it to almost like the vampire legends, where vampires cannot enter your house unless they're invited in, or it's that kind of a motif, I guess, in that urban legend type of thing. So
it is it's very scary, and it says that people that have had these encounters with these black-eyed kids and they do let them home into their house, they say either they're never heard of again, but there has been one encounter where this one woman or this one family, a couple, let the black-eyed kids in. They used their phone and they left, and then soon after, one of the couples suffered from some kind of like heart disease of some kind that was like so obscure that no one in the family carried, and it's a really, really rare disease. And now I can't remember exactly which one it was. I can look it up, but that has been the only story that I could find of someone that had an encounter with the black-eyed kid, was able to actually come out of it, but suffered health issues from it, so they say.
Yeah, the urban legend was made into a movie. What about 6 years?
Recently?
Yeah, about
Oh.
6 years ago.
Okay. And there's like a more recent one, but I didn't watch it. Did you guys see it?
No, have
Mhm.
not seen it yet.
no, all of our time is taken up now with the school year, and then doing this. It's like I can't even find time to watch a movie.
No, but I had heard the urban legend before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's been around. I mean, I've listened to Jim Harold's podcast for quite some time, and it is before our encounter. It was more of a pop culture type of thing. If something wasn't interesting that day, you flip on the TV and you'd find some kind of a UFO show. Or now, after we had our experience, I'm going back and looking at these things and going, and all these people are starting to come forward now and telling their story. And now the whole Phoenix light thing debacle with the size of that triangle that was flying, and how the governor was, trying to cover it up. And then he comes out and says, no, we saw it too, but I just didn't want to let people know that we had seen it. And they brought the attorney general of the state or something dressed up in a alien costume. So we caught the alien. He's right here. You guys just are too serious about this. And he pulls the giant alien head off, and it's a guy there, and everybody's laughing, but you could hear it. The laughter was that uneasy laughter, in the crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot
Like when
of
someone
people,
tells a really bad dad joke, you just like, you have to laugh, but it's like real painful.
yeah. Like, oh man. So can you tell us a little bit about your personal experience?
Sure. I'll tell a paranormal story. I'll tell you two. One of them it didn't happen to me personally, but it happened to a good friend of mine at the time. And I'll tell you one that happened to me. So the first one is, and this one's like a really boring story, but the first time I ever encountered like a ghost was I used to live next to like this big patch of just kind of forest that went into the bayou at the time. And there was like no people nearby. There was no real civilization happening in that area. And my dad used to take that road every single day to drive me to school at the time. And this one time I was looking out the window, which I always did as a kid. You count the colors of the cars, you look at the clouds, you look at people walking by, and it entertains you. Well, this one time I was looking like practically through the forest, and there was this girl who was wearing like a really pretty blue dress, maybe 15, maybe like 13, 14 years old, just guessing. And she looked right, she looked left, and then she just disappeared. And when you're 6 or 7 years old, right, this blows your mind. You're thinking, oh my gosh, witchcraft? Like, no way. And then later on, I was thinking, could that have been a ghost? Well, I simply don't know. I never saw that girl again in that forest. I did try looking for her at my young age, being curious, and could never find her. But when you're 6 or 7, you don't witness, you don't talk to witnesses and saying, well, did you see this girl wearing a blue dress at this time of this day? It's not a thing. So that was one situation that I kind of had a possibly supernatural experience, but I simply don't know because I didn't do any research after that. But another one is of a good friend of mine. She always had troubles sleeping at night from like the age of 6 or 7 to about 15. And she, whenever she'd go to bed, she would always see this woman in black, like just near the corner of her bedroom, and just in all black, but she was able to tell that it was a woman. Before I go on with the story, this girl, my friend at the time, she's very scientifically minded. Her father is a brain doctor, a neurological doctor, while her mother is just a house mom. But she got the personality from her dad's side. So she doesn't really believe in ghosts, doesn't believe in aliens, doesn't really believe in anything religious, even though her mother was practically an Orthodox Jew. But she just didn't care for it, right? So she was seeing this woman in her corner practically every single night. And the very first episode I did for Mysteries with a History was about the shadow people. And I did a lot of research behind this for the show, but also in general, because it was a really interesting story. And then it made me think of my friend at the time. And when someone encounters a shadow person that are usually in their room, they feel depression, they feel anxiety, they feel fear, they can be aggressive, they have eating disorders, and a few other things. Well, my friend had all of those. She had every single thing. And she just thought it was because she didn't feel loved in her household. Okay. Because she had a little brother, and her little brother was beloved by the family, but she was kind of the outcast. This is also another feeling that you can get when you encounter shadow people, at least allegedly. You can feel that sense of abandonment as well, or any kind of negative emotions, regardless of if they're true or not based on your environment. These entities allegedly are able to make you feel a certain way. So for years upon years upon years, she was encountering this woman. She was always very, very scared. Later on, her mother and my mom knew this woman, and we're just going to call her a witch for the time being, okay? Because I don't really remember what she called herself at the time, but she was a woman that practiced, at least allegedly, magic and able to cleanse the auras and like remove any kind of entities from people, or like parasites, okay? I did not meet her personally. I wasn't able to scope her out and be like, are you lying? I can't tell. So this is just a story based off what my mother told me, what my friend's mother told me, and my friend never told me the story. So after a while, my mom's friend was saying, you really need to see this woman. If you're really having like insomnia, then you better go check this lady out just to see if you're safe. My friend never told her mom of this woman she was seeing every single night. She was only getting the aftermath of her having insomnia, having anxiety, depression, eating disorders, all these things. She had a really bad eating disorder for like her whole life as a child. So then she meets this witch, but we're going to call her Magnolia. I think it's something related to her name or where she was. But Magnolia said, okay, I'll take your daughter in and we'll do a cleansing. So as soon as my friend tries to enter Magnolia's house, she wasn't even able to enter the house. And this might sound kind of weird, and you're like, oh, that's not really true, possibly. But some people that are more sensitive than others when it comes to maybe energy fields, and this is again mere speculation, in some respects, you're simply not able to enter a home. And if you have a parasite attached to you or an entity, they're able allegedly to prevent you from entering an inside of a building, either if it's like dark energy or if it's light energy. Okay, this is just from what I've been told. She wasn't able to enter. So Magnolia said, okay, well, that's a number one sign. That's really not good. I'm going to bring my singing bowls outside and put them around this girl. This young girl, she's about 14 at the time. Turns out, as soon as Magnolia was playing her singing bowls or ohm bowls, whatever you want to call them, my friend starts screaming. She feels nauseated. She wants to throw up. And then she passes out. She's gone. She's cold after all of the screaming. Her mom picks her up and they take her home. That same day, after she wakes up, she's like, Mom, how did I get here? Why do I feel so sick? Why does my body hurt so much? Like I just got into a boxing fight or something. Later, her mom told her the story and she was shocked. She said, I don't remember screaming. I don't remember feeling any pain. How could these things be true? Ghosts or these evil entities simply are not real. And to this day, she's still in denial of the story. I have asked her about it, and she never really wants to talk to me about this encounter. But as for her mother, my mother, and Magnolia, they all believe that it really did happen and that she did have some kind of entity attached to her. And based off of my research, it seems like it could have been some kind of shadow person or maybe a different entity altogether. We simply don't know. But my friend stated that she no longer sees this woman at night and she's able to sleep peacefully, no longer suffers from insomnia, has really her depression and anxiety have really lessened, and she no longer has an eating disorder to this day. That's
sounds almost like an exorcism that, you know,
in a sense it does, except there was no holy water, there was no priest, there was no chanting to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but it was, I guess in one sense it would kind of be like an exorcism, except I don't think she was possessed. She just had something attached to her. But I just want to really clarify, this is an alleged account. I simply don't know if it's really true or not. But it definitely makes you think. And while I was doing my research, I just kind of kept going back to her story of like, could that really have happened? Could it really have happened? That would be crazy if that was the case.
Do you think some of these entities and whether it's spiritual UFOs, you know, kind of dipping our toes into that, there are some people out there that think that these things are related in some way. With all your research and stuff that you've found, do you think it's so? For instance, I'm thinking of like Skinwalker Ranch, UFO reporting, strange entities appearing out of portals, you name it. They have Bigfoot running around out there, or in giant wolves. I mean, you know,
sounds pretty crazy,
right? Yeah, that the ranch hands have shot point blank, and they just kind of look at them and go, "Not today," you know, and then disappear. No blood trail, nothing. Then there's cattle mutilation, and it seems like this is a hotbed that turns all these different phenomenon into one thing. So much so that it was researched by Robert Bigelow, and I think it's NIDS. I think it was his
was.
Yeah. So what are your feelings on that? And what have you discovered about like Skinwalker and these things being all interconnected?
I think it's very possible. I think it's very possible that all of these things are interconnected. And if we look at, and I'm going to bring in some Buddhist teaching here from what I've learned from the age of 16, is everything is connected. Everything is connected. We are all from the same thing. Now, it is very possible that these UFOs and these paranormal activities could come from the same thing. And then it would lead you to the question, how would you classify a UFO? How would you classify an ET? Does anything come out of a portal not a UFO? Is it not an ET? Okay, well then what would you classify it as? Interdimensional? Are interdimensionals aliens? And you can just go into this loop. Are Bigfoot's aliens? Well, aliens, I guess, in that exact term, is anything that we cannot defy, okay? Or something that doesn't belong here. Okay, that's the same thing. You might call people that are coming through Mexico. You can call them illegal aliens because they do not belong in the United States. Well, Bigfoot, do they belong here? Do skinwalkers, do they belong here? And you can just go and go and go into this conversation. So I find it really exciting. I think it's very possible that these are all interconnected, but I would like to, talk to one and ask them these questions, because for the time being, at this point in time, it's merely a speculation and there's no factual evidence, at least on my behalf, to give you a definite answer. Now, there will be people that say, yes, they are related. And I'm like, okay, how? Well, because I said so. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to sell it for me. Well, I wrote 5 books on this topic. I am an award-winning author, so I know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, no, I don't really think that's how it works. I don't think that's how you gain credibility.
What about people that talk about being able to, what do they call it? Manifest? They like that people are all that we are creating these phenomenon by the power of our own mind.
Will. Oh,
yeah.
Like
is it Topaz? Is that what they're, I can't remember. Kind of like who was it?
Like it's kind of like when you're building it with intention, if you're bringing kind of like the new age,
or you're at least, if
religion.
if you're researching it, if you're looking into it and you believe in it, you're going to draw it to you, or you're going to make it manifest around you. Kind of like poltergeist. I was doing a little bit of reading on poltergeist and how they basically appear around young teenage girls, and it's like a manifestation of their psyche that are doing these things in the house. It's not them physically, but somehow they've created, and I could be screwing this all up, but it's their energy manifest into a physical world. It's really interesting.
That is interesting. It's not something that I've looked deeply into, but I am, from what I've read, yes, through intention, you're able to manifest certain things based off of books and based off like the new age religion, which is becoming very, very popular since like the mid 90s until present day, where you can read the book like The Vortex, and if you think about money, you will receive money.
Or The Secret, right? Wasn't that one of them? And
I
vision
so.
boards and
I think so.
Yeah,
I haven't
Oprah
read
thing.
it. Yes, Oprah at the time was pretty a big deal. But when it comes to this, it can also lead you into quantum entanglement if you want to take it the more scientific aspect to this kind of phenomena, right? You can think of like different dimensions. Well, if you're able to manifest it in another dimension and it can come in through here, well, then now you have whatever you really wanted. I haven't looked into it. I know a little bit about it, but now if you're talking about UFOs or talking about the paranormal and you're able to intend for them to show up, then it would lead me to the question, well, then they must have some kind of capabilities able to maybe tap into a certain kind of consciousness that they're able to interact with a dimension that simply is not theirs. If we're looking at the paranormal. Now, if we're looking at ETs, there have been countless stories of these beings being able to talk telepathically. Now, if you're talking telepathically, it makes you question what kind of brain capabilities do they have that we do not possess as humans, or are they tapping into a different dimension altogether? We don't know. These are all very speculative theories that have been tested by few, but not tested by many. And does it, and for you, Wayne, for being a science teacher, how would you falsify it? How many times can you test it and still be getting the same results? Because sometimes you can have the intention, but it doesn't come. If you want to bring the aspect of religion, like I talked about a little bit earlier, there are people that pray all the time, and they're praying for a new car, they're praying for a new house, and they never receive it. Is that intention? Or why is someone else getting it, but when they're praying, this person, they're not getting it? So it's very, very muddy water. I think it's very confusing because there are too many variables.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And thinking about the aliens, there was James Fox had did the phenomenon, and I believe Stephen Greer was a part of that or interviewed in that.
I don't think so.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of something else. But Stephen Greer and his group, I believe, are saying, that they can meditate or as a group. And again, everything is getting muddied in my brain because I'm looking at so many things at the same time. But somehow they're able to call these things down. But when they show you pictures or of them sitting around a campfire and things, you could look at this and they go, see right there's a bean. There looks like there's a bean in that shaded area. And it's like, well, that's the same thing as seeing the Virgin Mary in my toast in the morning. That's pareidolia. Your brain is trying to make a pattern and make it recognizable so it makes sense. And we have a phenomenon here that I'm looking into. It's the Michigan Stonehenge, and it's under the water of Lake Michigan. They've discovered these circular rocks, and it's really cool. It's part of what they're calling the Michigan Triangle, and I'm trying to do some research into that and get somebody on to talk about that. But on one of the stones, they say this looks like it could be a carving of a mastodon, that went extinct, but you can't really see anything until they start drawing the lines of what that person is telling you what they think it is. And then you go, oh, well, yes, of course. And then it's like one of those things that you can't unsee, So I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling at this point, but
yeah, it's very difficult to comprehend, especially for those that have a more scientific mindset that definitely want the evidence versus just kind of jumping on, well, someone said this, so it must be true kind of thing, which can be very not something I would recommend. And this goes for anything. And if we look at some ancient teachings as well, they would say, do not believe what you read, do not believe what I say. You need to have your own experience to believe it for yourself, because anyone can tell you anything. And yes, you can believe it. Yes, it can take you down a path, but you can simply not walk that path if you don't have legs. Okay, you need to have legs. You need to have that experience to be able to walk the path of truth. Now, when it comes to Stephen Greer and CE5, yes, it's very similar to the thing that we had just spoken about intention and about being able to manifest something. I have not had the pleasure to speak to Stephen Greer firsthand, and I have not practiced CE5. I know people who have and have had their experiences, but I think there is a difference from creating something with intention versus placing communication outside and hoping someone picks up the cell phone. It's kind of like, am I going to take my eggs and flour and make a cake and put it in the oven? Or am I just going to pick up the phone and call a baker? Are you going to make it yourself? Or are you going to call someone that can just make it for you like that? So I think those are kind of two slightly different phenomena in their own way, but also incredibly similar. So CE5 is interesting. I think there needs to be more scientific studies attached to it. And I neither agree nor disagree with Stephen Greer. I think him having this conversation is fantastic. But I believe that there should be more scientists on his team to be able to collect data on it.
Yeah, I agree. But one thing that's really interesting about Stephen Greer is this whole Wilson document or documents that Richard Dolan recently went into like a 5-hour deep dive into the Wilson documents and the meeting that Stephen Greer had with Admiral Wilson. And I'm about partway through that. Well, maybe halfway now at this point, just trying to wrap my head around that. He went with information with black projects to this admiral, and the admiral decided to look into it. And then the Admiral Wilson, was basically threatened and told, sorry, buddy, you don't have a need to know. And he's an admiral, right? And I guess they threatened him with his job and everything else. And there is all of these documents that recorded the meetings that went on between Greer and a few other people. Again, the names all escape me, but it's very fascinating that, if the government wasn't going to take this seriously, why would they even give them audience? And I don't know what to make of that. I mean, what's your take on that whole Wilson document? You've dug into that with Jimmy, I think, right?
We talked about the MJ-12 documents,
MJ, yes.
but I have not looked into the Wilson docs yet.
Oh, wow.
Maybe I will be sometime in the future, but it just hasn't been on my list yet.
Okay. Yeah, it's fascinating, and man, I would love to talk to Richard Dolan on here and ask him. He is like the researcher of researchers. He's been around for so long, and well, now I'm making him sound like he's an old man. No, he's well aged. He's been in this since the 70s, I guess.
I don't think he's that old.
I don't know. It just seems like everywhere I look, I see his name pop up with any of this stuff. It's like, okay, I want to look into this. Richard Dolan says, man, this guy just keeps appearing. Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about was, and I was talking to Richard Serrett about this, but recently Lue was on Tucker Carlson, and he was on there for like a minute and a half and talking about this, the funding for the NDAA and looking and taking UFOs, UAPs very seriously. And he said something, and I'm gonna quote him here. He said the task force was given a permanent capability instead of a temporary one, and it forces the Secretary of Defense to annually report to Congress what we've learned about UAPs, work with our international allies on this matter, and these two things right here are what got me, coming from a science perspective. Requires any recovered UAP material to be reported to Congress and report any adverse medical effects by our pilots that came into close proximity to these UAPs, which in my mind is telling me that these things are known to be true.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on this? I watched Lou's body language on that, and Tucker Carlson was like, so do we have these materials? And Lue is kind of smiling. He's nodding his head, but he goes, I can't really say, but if we did, this would make it so that they have to talk about it, that they have to report these things. What's your take on this, these statements?
Well, when it comes to Lue Elizondo, he definitely drops a lot of hints. He places a lot of breadcrumbs that maybe people might not catch the first time, but if you watch it a few times over, he's very careful with this choice of words.
Yeah,
his body language is very specific in what he's talking about, and he is someone that's really good at what he does. When he was talking about this permanent office, the debrief also covered this as soon as the information came out. And it's really, really good news because the task force, the UAP task force, is just temporary. It's not anything permanent. And that's a possible reason to why only one case out of 144 were solved, just because they're a temporary office. It's a possibility that maybe they don't have all the information that was needed to be able to fill out all that information for the preliminary report. Now, that is just speculation. There is no evidence to back that up. Now, with this permanent office, that's a really, really big deal. Regardless if they give all that information out to the public, that yearly report, we'll probably only see a redacted version of that. But Congress will be seeing the full report, to my knowledge. And that is really awesome, because it's because of these congressmen that are pushing the laws, that are getting things done, getting bills written, and they'll be the ones changing our government. Also with the Congress, because there are new people that are always being elected every certain amount of years, you're always going to be getting a new type of people, versus some of these alphabet agencies, you have the same people for an entire lifetime, and that information is going to die with them. Okay. With Congress, you're going to get new people, and more people are going to be advised of this information with the yearly reports. So I think it's really exciting. I'm really happy that it's becoming official. I think they're still signing a few more documents to make it official. I'm not too sure on that. But then also you're having the UN, which is also going to be having a UAP type of office as well, which is in the works. And that's taking us places that no one expected. Now, in the 1970s, Jacques Vallée and a few others, J. Allen Hynek and an astrophysicist, also covered by the Debrief, they did push for a UFO office. However, it never came into fruition just because no one pushed for it at the time. But now that things are changing, that the environment is different with wanting UAP transparency, it's very possible that they might actually come to a conclusion that this is necessary for the entire world.
Yeah, I agree. The one of the things I heard said by, and again, this is he said, she said, and it was on
it's all hearsay.
These UFO shows. But one of the problems that elected officials have is that they are temporary employees. And so the guys that are in deep, that are permanent fixtures of these Black programs, whether they're, skunk works or whatever, can look at these guys and tell them, sorry, you might not be here next year because you're not going to be elected, and we can't give you that information. So I find that very interesting that, that our government officials that want to look into this don't get told things because of that fact of they are, you're a temporary employee. We're not going to give you this information and have you put it out there. And I don't know. I find it very, very interesting that there's so much of a machinations that are going on in Washington and behind the scenes with this, that we don't even scratch the surface of what's possibly going on and what they're thinking and what they're talking about, which is unfortunate because like the UFO report that came out in June, the 9 pages, or if you consider 6 pages, after you take the cover page and the the little document apart, you get about 6 pages.
The copyright document,
yeah,
the preface,
and the national. I think it was the National Security Council got the whole like 89 pages, and I'm very interested in what the sonar logs and things like that. There are other sensors out there besides radar that have detected these things moving at high speeds in water, but they did not release any of that. All we have is the radar and 143 things so far. But we recently saw the video of the I want to say it was the USS Kidd, a destroyer that had their camera people filming a UFO hovering above the water. It comes flying in, it hovers above the water, and bloop, down it goes. And they're like, it's gone. They thought it crashed. They went to investigate. There was nothing there and just gone. And there's no real explanation at all.
No, and there's a lot of stories like that too. There are multiple
Exactly.
witness accounts of crafts that are from craft that are in the sky and that plummet into the water. I mean, people believe that they crashed, that this craft crashed, but it didn't. And I think with the Nimitz encounter, it brought these kinds of stories into the light of the public to be able to, I guess, give some people closure that have already had these encounters, but also for those that have never heard of it to actually get excited and to go on a boat in the middle of the ocean and look for these things as
Right.
well. So the Nimitz encounter, the USS Omaha, when these stories came out, again, maybe for our community, it was exciting, but nothing crazy. But for those that don't know anything about the topic, I mean, like, you're thinking, what the heck is going on?
Right.
This is real. This is real. And more people are becoming conscious with this topic, and I think there's a lot to come from it. And I think we need to be ready as podcasters, as researchers, as enthusiasts, whatever you want to call yourself, activists. We need to be ready for more people coming into the community, and instead of looking at them like they're obviously a CIA agent, we cannot trust them, but
Right.
instead look at them and be happy that they're being involved, because they're the future. More people that we have, the more transparency we can push for from our government. But like I said at the very beginning, we are the disclosure, us having these encounters, us having boots on the ground research, regardless if you're looking for cryptids, if you're looking for aliens, if you're looking for mermaids, doesn't matter. When we go out there and we document it as the public, we can get more information out there than those that claim that they have all the information, but will never leak it out to the public.
Yeah. It's like I talked to some of my friends and I'm like, hey, we're trying to get Lue Elizondo on. Really? Look at what he did. He's counterintelligence. You were in the military. You know about intelligence, military intelligence. He's counterintelligence. What do you think you're going to get from him? Maybe something, but he started this ball rolling. I mean, it was thanks to him that really kind of got things going. Now,
he did. And you know what's really rare about this situation is that if he was counterintelligence, if he really was a liar, which some people believe that he is, at one point in time since 2017 until present day, he would have slipped up. He hasn't yet. Now, is that evidence that he's not like counterintelligence? No. He could slip up in the future, and maybe we'll all find out that he's not saying who he says he is. But until then, he has proved nothing other than being loyal, other than respecting his NDAs. And if he really cannot say anything, instead of lying, he'll say, I simply cannot say that right now. But then he kind of drops answers here and there throughout the conversation a little bit later on that a total counterintelligence, whatever guy would lie to you straight up, give you some information that is true and some that is false, such as Richard Doty, or just make you look stupid. But instead, Lue Elizondo does not make anyone look stupid. All the information that he has given, people are able to verify, and he does not give information that one cannot be verified or that he cannot talk about. He won't talk about it then.
Right. We were talking to, Big Will and Micah from, the Band of Bearded Brothers, or, Will from UFO Garage. And, I think they were saying that they believe that he is still under a non-disclosure agreement and, still, look, I was in the military as well. And when I signed on the dotted line and I had certain clearances and stuff, there are things that I will not talk about in order to protect people that I worked with 20 or 30 years ago, and things that I saw and tested and things like that, weapon systems and whatever. But, even now it's obsolete, but I still wouldn't talk about it because there is a certain loyalty to not this government, but to this country, to the documents that we put our, behinds on the line for the Constitution. We don't fight for politicians. We fight for the country and keeping that document, live so that it keeps our government in check. And there are certain things that we that you just can't talk about. And I totally get that, and I understand that he's probably making sure there's people still working and alive. You can't endanger people's lives and break certain confidentiality with and trust with people that you're working with. So yeah, I totally get it. And that's kind of what I tell people when I talk to them about having Lue come on. It's like, well, he's not going to answer any of your questions. So, well, he does in a way. You just have to know what to listen for.
And how to ask the question. Because sometimes people say, well, he didn't give a good answer. Anybody can say that, right? And then you can simply say, well, maybe the question was not asked correctly. And that can go for anyone that you interview. They might give you the same generic answer that they always give in every cast because you asked the question incorrectly. So I think it's a tango. It really goes both ways for interviewing anyone, not just Lue, not just anyone in the government, but anybody altogether.
Yeah, I agree. And I did want to ask you one thing, and then we'll start wrapping it up here because I know that we've been at this a little over an hour. So when he was talking about reporting any adverse medical effects by our pilots that came into close proximity to these UAPs, have you heard anything to that effect about any of our pilots, fighter pilots or airline pilots or otherwise, that have had some kind of adverse medical from being in contact with these things?
From my research, I have not. And also, it's not something that I focused on, and I will be now. The only thing that I can kind of lean back on was there was one encounter in Project Blue Book where military officials encountered a craft and ended up getting really sick. They got some kind of like skin lesions of some sort after touching some kind of object. But that's the only story that I have, and that was from many, many, many years ago. Now, if you look at Ryan Graves, he has stated that maybe he hasn't stated anything about medical, anything, but he has stated that he's been seeing these crafts in the sky almost every single day while he was in the force. So either way, it's good that Lue has been talking about this, and it can lead people's attention maybe in a place that they need to look for is looking at these issues, right? This kind of medical records proof.
That's evidence.
Right. Is it some kind of evidence that can lead people to believe this phenomenon more than what they did previously? So I think it's a good thing that he brought people's attention to that specific detail that maybe many people didn't even consider. It's not something that I've considered.
Well, it makes me think about the whole Rendlesham Forest encounter where those Air Force security guys came in direct contact with a landed craft, and a couple of them talked about touching it and what it felt like. And I would be interested now in seeing their medical records, or have they had any medical, I know I can't get the medical records, but but have any of them had any adverse effects? I mean, we hear about, like, when we interviewed Terry Lovelace, about being abducted, and then they have these implants put in, and he's got the evidence, he's got the x-rays of things with wires in his legs and weird formations of things inside of his leg. I mean, his story is incredibly scary, and it kind of goes along with the whole, when you see one of these triangle things, you need to watch out. They seem to be kind of more on the threat aspect instead of the, we're just zooming around you. But it's the evidence that is very interesting from a medical perspective. And I wonder if people could go back and look with some different eyes in that regards to looking for the evidence to point to these contacts actually really happening.
I agree with you. And the whole statement about seeing new eyes, I think with this phenomena, there have been a lot of the same people saying the same information, or looking at cases that have been seen by the same kinds of people with the same kind of mentality. So with this new generation, people being interested in the topic, these new eyes can possibly see things that have been missed for 30, 40 years that no one else caught. But that's why I love this kind of topic, and bringing as many people in, regardless if you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. But if you can just bring in as many perspectives as possible, everyone's going to see a different facet to the story than somebody else. And the best way to do so is when you've never heard the story before, have never heard of the data before, so you can look at it with the most fresh eyes. And these new kids that are coming into this topic are going to be exactly that. People that have no background information, have almost no bias, are not contaminated by previous stories by some very, don't get me wrong, some very credible people. But just because they're credible does not mean that all their information is correct.
Right.
And I think the more questions that we ask, even if they're considered stupid questions, the more questions that we ask, the better it is for all of us.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why it's important that we wanted to have you on the show. So some of the people that listen to us can hear about the new fresh perspectives and new people that are coming into this. I'm an old dude, but I'm new to this whole thing and researching and even talking about this. I find myself in this weird position as a geoscientist, a earth and space scientist, as a high school teacher, and being thrust into this. And now I'm just trying to collect all the information I can. And same thing with my wife. She's over here as a 22-year middle school ELA veteran, teaching English and mythology and stuff. And then, here we are, we're just leaving our little bingo hall at 2:30 in the morning, and here's this giant craft. And I immediately was like, oh, that's an airliner. It's missing Detroit Metro Airport. Something's wrong. Wait a minute. Those landing lights are pointing down, and they're just glowing. They're not shining any kind of light. And then I could see it was just this huge triangle, just black as could be, absorbing light reflected off the ground. And it was almost like a skin on it that was absorbing light, and it was just kind of outlining the outside edges of it. And Michelle looked at me, and the first thing she said was, what?
When did our military get that?
When did our military get that? And I was like, no, that thing is the size of a Walmart. I mean, it was at least 300 feet on a side, 250 to 300 feet. And it was sitting there. And I'm like, aerodynamics says that something that big can't sit there unless it's some kind of a blimp or something like that.
Well, it was extremely ominous.
That was the thing, because I could not figure it out. So I was like, we're gunning it out of here. We're taking, and then it rotated. It sat there and it rotated 90 degrees and then started moving parallel with us along the expressway. We lost sight of it. We went down this sound abatement. When we popped up, I was expecting it to be right off of her, right. She was on the passenger side. So right off her right hand side. And we're looking, and it was just gone.
Wow. That story is insane. And I just want to quickly say before I head out is you guys are such a dynamic duo. Wayne, you have the science aspect, you have the space aspect, and Michelle, you have the English and the mythology aspect. You're able to read a document and understand the wording and why they chose the words that they did. That's beautiful. A lot of people don't have the things that both of you guys have, that kind of mentality, the science and the English, but also the mythology as well, of hearing stories, understanding to why these stories were written for many aspects, to understand what was going on in the environment, and bringing that into the UFO phenomena. So you guys are killing it. That is so awesome. Right? Both of you guys have that kind of background.
We're definitely a unique perspective. I will say that. And we got pulled into this, and it's like, you know what, let's run with it. And I want, my scientific curiosity is killing me right now. It's like, I want to know so bad. Put me in one of those ships. Let me play around in there. I will talk. Lou, hire me, bro. I will be out in the field working these things. I mean, I'll do whatever. I need to know, because as a former, private pilot and flying planes, and I grew up around aircraft. My dad's a retired United Airline pilot. I mean, I love aircraft, and what I saw completely freaked me out. And
not to mention tonight, I'll still be talking about the black-eyed children probably 3-4 hours from now.
Yeah.
I love urban legends.
Yeah.
Oh, me too. Me too. Don't
It's
tell
kind of
anyone,
like
but I love them.
Yeah, it's
The
like
legends.
the Men in Black too, right?
Oh.
These guys that are, they're not, they don't appear to be human in certain ways.
I did a
right?
whole episode on that, and it was bizarre
Yes.
hearing the alleged accounts. And we'll talk about that another day.
Yes.
But yes, the Men in Black, if you believe it or not, regardless, the stories are crazy.
Yes. All right. So before we let you go, do you have any ties to Michigan? I have to ask.
I don't. Well, no, I don't. I knew someone from Michigan. That's as good as it's gonna get.
All right, close enough. All right. And so in closing, what do you have coming up on any of your shows? Let our audience know where they can find you. And you've got so much going on. I know you have Shifting the Paradigm and Paradigm Shifts, but you also do work with like Micah Hanks and stuff too. So let us have it. Just give it all to our audience.
Okay, on this upcoming Tuesday, I'm doing Bob Lazar Part 2 with Jimmy Church. The first part was so heated. The conversation was so intense. We needed to do a Part 2. And for the first 30 minutes, we're also going to have Richard Dolan on, who is pro Bob Lazar. Jimmy Church is anti Bob Lazar after 30 years of believing in him. And I'm going to be sitting in the back eating popcorn and just being oh my goodness. That's happening on Tuesday. But
Bob Lazar is a Michigan boy, by the way. His store is, or his chemical store, whatever he's doing up north, he sells chemicals to companies that, I guess so. And he was raided by the FBI looking for materials. So I'll just leave it at that.
I heard that story. It's pretty insane. And I'm on the fence. Like I said earlier, I have no bias in the situation when it comes to anything that I post on YouTube or on social media. I won't say I believe or agree or disagree. I'm just kind of bringing in all the data and getting the good and the bad aspects and trying to make it equal. I also have Shifting the Paradigm, where I interview UFO researchers and enthusiasts. I work for the Debrief. I was a content creator, creating YouTube videos for them. For Tim McMillan, MJ Benias, and Micah Hanks. But overall, everything's on my Beacons link, all of the links, because there's so many things going on. I have a Reddit group, I have a Facebook group. My Twitter is eyes_on_the_skies, where I'm the most active there. I place all of my updates there compared to all my other places of social media. And some cool things are coming up in the near future. There'll be some announcements coming out with the progress of my channel and how things are going. So I'm really excited for that when it does come out. And I think that's it. I think that's everything.
Sounds good. All right, Christina, we're going to go ahead and let you go. And I know you're busy and you do need to get some sleep. Get some sleep. All right.
Well, I have some assignments too that are due in a few hours. I have to get them done before I fail my class.
Anybody that doesn't know, when I say, new fresh eyes, young guns coming into this, Christina's still in college doing all of this, correct? What are you a junior now at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure I am. It's kind of all a blur, but I'm majoring in business and communication right now, but I've wanted to change my major so many times, but I'm trying to stick to it so I can graduate at a decent time. Because as soon as I graduate, I have some really big things planned, which I'm excited to talk about as soon as I get my paper in my hand and I say, guys, I did it.
Yep.
I graduated. And the last thing I want to mention is I also have a website called paradigmshifts.blog with a new attachment added called Project Eyes on the Skies, where people can turn in their own photos and videos of things that they consider unexplained. And then I go ahead and enhance the footage and and then I place it back on YouTube for people to make their own opinions on what these things might be. But
Well,
if it does turn out to be an IFO, an identified flying object, then I make sure to classify that as well.
Well, you may be getting an influx then once our people on our Facebook group hear that, because we get stuff turned in quite often, and it's pretty interesting and amazing. So if you're listening out there, Facebook group, which I'm sure you are, send this stuff to Christina as well, so that she can take a look at it, and she's got the know-how of the video manipulation or enhancement. I shouldn't say manipulation, because then they'll be like, oh, you're just going to mess with my stuff. Right. Right. No. Okay, great. Well, Christina, thank you. It's been a pleasure. We are very happy to have had you on. We're going to bid you good night.
Thank you so much for letting me be here. I want to do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
And it was a lot of fun. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to get her back on so that her and I can talk about urban legends.
Absolutely. Man, that was great. I was glad that she could find the time in her busy schedule to come on the show. Being in college as a junior, trying to finish up that degree is really, really tough. So.
Well, and I remember college as a junior, so I can't even imagine where she finds the time.
Yeah, especially dealing with video and doing editing and all the research that she's doing and the people she's interviewing. When she says she doesn't get much sleep, I believe it. One thing I do want to point out is that I was saying that I had seen Stephen Greer in the movie The Phenomenon, and I was mistaken, because we're doing our own research, and I'm doing a lot of listening to podcasts, watching documentaries and things like that. The movie I was thinking of that was talking a lot about Stephen Greer, and it really seemed like it was his movie, which could be, or at least a documentary, was called Unacknowledged, not The Phenomenon, Unacknowledged. I don't want to talk too much about it, because you should go check out not only The Phenomenon, but also Unacknowledged, and see, the differences between the two documentaries. It's really interesting. All right, Michelle, I think with that, we should probably call it an evening.
Yep. Hopefully everyone has a good one.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. We are glad to have you on board. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. And remember, follow us, subscribe, join our Facebook group. Everyone is welcome. All right, everybody, have a great night. And remember, keep your eyes to the sky.
You have been listening to the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast. You can reach us at mi.ufo.podcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at mi_UFO and join our Facebook group by searching for Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters. So until next time.